Don't worry, Liz had this smile that struck me as kind of strange. This was 3 days before the company party, and if I had known what it meant, maybe I could have avoided what happened next. My name's Albert Brown, I'm 46 years old, and I'm a successful account manager at a big manufacturing company. I've been married to Liz for 25 years. We've been together since high school and friends since 4th grade, and we've built a life that anyone would call the American dream. A big house by Lake Arlington, a daughter we absolutely adore, and financial security. Stability that most people can only dream of. But let's rewind a bit. The girl's full name is Elizabeth, and she works as a graphic designer at a prestigious ad agency. Even after all these years, she still knows how to grab attention. With her light hair and bright blue eyes, she has a figure that seems to defy time. She's always been one of those women who walks into a room and makes everyone notice her. And I was proud of that, proud that she was mine, or at least I thought she was. We grew up on the same street in Fort Worth, Texas. By the time we graduated, we were inseparable. We went to the University of Texas, lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment, and made it work together. Even though we were broke college students, those were great times, those moments when you think you're invincible. We laughed about how we knew how to live together even before we got married. Fast forward, we got married right after college, and a few years later, we had our only child, Maria. She's 21 now and studying at the University of Oklahoma, and she's engaged to William is a solid guy from a wealthy family, and he treats her like gold. Honestly, we couldn't have dreamed of a better couple. Life was, at least on the surface, damn close to perfect financially. We were doing more than well, with a significant amount in our agency. My salary as a client manager is $500,000 a year. About 15 years ago, we bought a property that was under foreclosure near the lake for $350,000, renovated it ourselves, and turned it into our dream home. Today, it's worth, with over $2 million in savings and our retirement funds, we lived pretty comfortably. Ford made things even more complicated over the years. We had a routine. We would have breakfast together every morning, talk about our days in the evenings, and find time for dates whenever we could. It was a steady life. She would tell me about her colleagues' work and her deadlines, and I would share my wins and the stresses of managing a multi-million-dollar business. It all seemed to work. Or at least that's what I thought. Looking back now, it's a different story. There were these little cracks, tiny moments when she seemed spaced out or just too tired to talk about her day. But she brushed it off casually, mentioning the corporate party and giving me an easy out by saying I didn't have to go. At first, I didn't think much of it, but then she brought it up again and again. Each time, her words were kind, but the message was clear. Albert, you really don't have to go. Something felt off, and for the first time in years, I noticed it. It was the start of something. That invitation to the party, it cut deep. It was like a spark that lit a match. I didn't realize it at the time, but everything I thought I knew about my life was about to get put to the test. Saturday night rolled around, and I was determined to go to this party. Lise looked stunning, even more than usual. She was wearing this tight black dress that hugged her curves, her hair cascading over her shoulders, and her blue eyes seemed brighter than ever. She always knew how to dress for a crowd, but tonight felt like a performance, like she was putting on a show. We arrived at the place was buzzing, and the first thing I noticed was how everyone seemed to know her. I mean Lise. She was such a social butterfly between us two, but there was something different about it tonight. People were looking at her with polite smiles that lingered just a second too long, and the glances they exchanged felt loaded with meaning. Then he showed up. Before I could even ask her where we should start, a guy, probably in his 50s, gray-haired but fit, walked right up to her. His confidence was a bit unsettling. Lise smiled warmly and reached her hand out to him. It felt really intimate, like she was more than just a coworker. She quickly turned to me, kissed me on the cheek, and introduced him as Chad Smith, one of her ad sales reps. That name stuck in my head like a splinter. I tried to be polite, but there was something about him that rubbed me the wrong way. His smile seemed too relaxed, his laughter way too rehearsed, and the way he looked at Liz didn't sit right with me. We spent the next hour chatting and drinking, but I stayed sober. I told Liz I was in. I was driving, but the truth was that I needed to keep a clear head. I started paying attention to every little thing, like how often Liz glanced over at Chad, how close they stood when they talked, and those almost imperceptible touches on her hand that lingered just a second too long. It got even worse when we hit the dance floor. Liz and I had always loved dancing together, but that night she seemed distracted. Every time I spun her around, her eyes were wandering around the room. I followed her gaze, and there he was, Chad, standing at the edge of the hall, just watching. With a smug grin, he was definitely challenging me to react. The turning point came when we sat down at our little table to take a break. This guy walked right up to us, totally ignoring me like I wasn't even there, and asked Liz to dance. His arrogance made my blood boil. Liz must have sensed how close I was to losing it because she sweetly smiled at him and said, "All my dances are reserved for my husband." For a moment I felt a wave of relief, but the flash of anger in Chet's eyes said it all. I knew this was far from over. Later, Lise went to the bar for another drink while I watched her from a distance, my nerves on edge. That's when I saw Chad approach her again. This time their conversation was quieter and more tense. Lise looked at him with this pleading expression, her lips moving just enough for me to read them. She said, "I'm sorry, babe." That's it. I froze, all the worries in my mind echoing back at me. Who the hell was this guy to her? I spent the rest of the evening just watching. With every interaction, every glance, every whisper, I could tell something was going on, and it felt like everyone in that room knew it too. People were looking at us, looking at me with pity in their eyes, as if I were the last person to get the cruel joke. When we finally got home, I confronted Liz in the car. "What's going on between you and Chad?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She brushed me off, called me paranoid, and said Chad was just a colleague. But her tone was too calm, too rehearsed, and I wanted to believe her. I really wanted to know, but that night when she was lying next to me in bed pretending to be asleep, I knew one thing for sure. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to stop until I got them. The days after that party were tense. Liz acted like everything was fine, like I was just imagining things. She smiled, laughed at my jokes, even cooked my favorite meals, but I couldn't shake the memories of that night. The looks, the whispers, the way she said, "I'm sorry, darling." It was eating me alive. I decided that I needed the truth, not just a word. I could twist the words or ignore them, but I needed proof, something solid. So I did what any guy in my position would do. I hired a private detective. His name was David Carter, a solid guy with a good reputation. I laid everything out for him, told him everything, and asked him to find out if there was anything going on between Liz and the kid. David was sharp and didn't waste any time. A week later, he started sending me updates, and the first photos hit me like a punch to the gut. There was my wife, walking right in. A motel with a vibe, they looked totally relaxed and comfortable, like it was just another day for them. In another photo, they're kissing in the parking lot, completely oblivious to the world around them. I told myself to wait until David had everything before confronting Lise. The whole story unfolded over the next few weeks. Evidence piled up, more photos, videos, even audio recordings. It was worse than I had imagined. They weren't just sneaking around during lunch breaks. It was a full-blown affair. There were recordings of Lise talking about their relationship, agreement about the wives in the office, laughing about how easy it was to hide everything. The tricky part was hearing her talk about me. "Albert would have never suspected," she said, in one of the clips. Her voice was light and carefree. "He's too busy with work to notice." It blew my mind. She really underestimated me, wrote me off like some clueless idiot. When David handed me the final report, I was sitting in my car outside his office. As he showed me the files, I flipped through the pages, looked at the photos, and read the transcripts, feeling the weight of it all. That burden fell on my shoulders. It wasn't just a mistake or a moment of weakness. Lise was living a double life, and everyone around her knew it, everyone except me. That evening, I got home and acted like it was just another day. Lise greeted me with a smile, asked how my day was, and went about her business like there was nothing to hide. I watched her closely, every move, every word. It drove me crazy how well she pretended. The next morning, I decided it was time. During breakfast, I placed the envelope with all the evidence on the table. Lise started talking, and I tried to keep my voice calm. "You'd never betray me, right?" She froze, her fork hanging in the air. "Of course not," she said defensively. "Why are you even asking that?" Without saying a word, I pulled out the first photo and slid it across the table. She stared at it, her face going pale. Then I put down another one and another. With each photo, her expression shifted from shock to panic. "Albert, this isn't what it looks like," she stammered, her voice shaking. "I don't like him. It's just physical. It doesn't mean anything." I leaned in, my voice low. When she cheated, it meant everything to me. After that, her excuses came pouring out, saying it was just a fling, that she never stopped loving me, that she thought I'd never find out. But none of that mattered. I had proof, and there was no turning back. Sitting at the table with the woman I had loved for 25 years, I felt something shift inside me. The trust was gone, shattered into pieces that, as I knew, would never be put back together again. Knowing about the betrayal wasn't enough. It was what happened next that really broke me. I was still really hurting after our fight at breakfast. The atmosphere in the house was tense. Lisa kept trying to apologize, trying to explain herself, but every word just made me angrier. She insisted it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything, just a year-long relationship, and she wanted me to believe that it was all pointless. I needed some space, so I decided to focus on work for a few days. Then Maria called. My daughter, my pride and joy, she's always been a bright spot in my life. So when her name popped up on my phone, I thought maybe this was the distraction I needed. "Hey babe," I said, trying to sound normal, but as soon as she started talking, I realized something was off. "Dad," she said hesitantly, "I just talked to Mom. She's really upset. She said you kicked her out of the house. What's going on?" My heart sank. I didn't kick Liz out. At least not yet. But it was clear she was already twisting the story. I took a deep breath and explained everything. I told Maria about Liz's affair, about Chad, and how it's been going on for over a year. So how did she react? "Dad, it didn't really seem to me like I was misunderstanding things. It's not that important." I repeated, "Maria, your mom betrayed me. She lied to me for a whole year." She sighed like I was the unreasonable one. "Dad, it's the 21st century. People have affairs. It happens all the time, and no one makes a big deal out of it." "I never treated your mother like that," I snapped. "I've never betrayed her, not once." Her tone changed. It got defensive and almost condescending. "Well, maybe you should have. Then you wouldn't feel so hurt. Because of this, Dad, you need to let this go and let Mom come home. She's your wife, and she loves you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own daughter was taking Mom's side, acting like I was the bad guy who had hurt her. It felt like a betrayal on top of a betrayal. And then Maria casually added, "I know, Dad, he's a great guy. Mom and I talked, and we think he should come to the wedding." Her voice was louder than I expected. "He means a lot to Mom," she said. "Maria, it was like the most natural thing in the world for you. Honestly, I kind of like him too. If Mom wants him there, he should be part of the day. Maybe he could even walk her down the aisle with you." "I'm done. If Chad is at your wedding, Maria," I said in a cold voice, "then I won't be there." There was a pause, and then she said, "Dad, you're being ridiculous." "No," I firmly replied. "If you want Chad there, fine, let him play the father of the bride. Because I won't. I hung up before she could say anything. My hands were shaking and my chest felt tight. I'd always been there for Maria, supporting her, and now she threw me under the bus to protect her mom and some guy she barely knew. That night, Liz tried to talk to me again. She came into the bedroom with tears streaming down her face, begging me to fix things. But then she had the nerve to add, "I want us all to work this out, Albert, but I also want to keep seeing the kid. You need to accept that." I was completely at a loss, and I quietly said to Liz, "You need to leave." But she didn't. At least for now, but at that moment something broke inside me. My wife, my daughter, they weren't the people I thought they were. For the first time, I realized I was on my own. By the time Liz told me she wanted to sort everything out, while still keeping Chad in mind, something flipped inside me. That's when I knew I'd had enough, not just with her but with the whole life we built together, our marriage, our home, the routine, even the dreams. They were just a facade now. But I wasn't planning on walking away empty-handed if Liz and Chad thought that. They thought they could humiliate me and walk away without any consequences, but little did they know I had a surprise waiting for them. I started secretly planning. Years of managing accounts had taught me to think strategically, and this time was no different. First of all, I needed to secure my finances. Lisa might have been great at graphic design, but when it came to money, she left everything to me. She had no idea how our investments were structured or how liquid our assets were. That gave me the upper hand. The first step? I moved a significant chunk of our savings to an offshore account. In a name she would never be able to trace, I took out a loan using our house as collateral. Solid was always bragging to her friends that we owned the house outright, but that was never true. Sure, we paid off the original mortgage, but refinancing investments was just something I did when I couldn't be bothered to come up with cash, and I managed to get $440 against it. Every cent of that $0,000 went straight into accounts she'd never see. The debt was all in her name. I had been working on this quietly for weeks, using every spare moment to finish my plan. Meanwhile, I was pretending to leave the betrayal behind me. I told Lisa we could try to make things right, and it seemed like she felt relieved, maybe even a bit smug like she had won. Little did she know that every day spent at that motel was just another day I was getting closer to pulling the rug out from under her. At work, things were. The company was in the middle of a merger, and they offered me a buyout package of over $500,000. I jumped at the chance and arranged for the funds to go directly into my offshore account. Then came the next step. I canceled all the wedding expenses. Maria's dream wedding was off. I called the planner and told her I wasn't paying for anything, and I suggested that Maria ask her dad for help instead. The planner was stunned, but I didn't care. If Maria wants to side with Lise and their kid, that's on her. I finally had to deal with the consequences. I needed Lisa to sign some documents without really understanding what they were. So I created fake life insurance policies and convinced her they were part of some new corporate program. One evening, after a few drinks, I brought her the papers and said we needed to get them notarized. She was drunk enough to agree without reading a single word. Her signature sealed the deal. The whole process took about 2 months, but by the end, I was ready to bail. The house, the car, the debts, those were now her problems. The bank will be knocking on the door pretty soon. But by then, I won't be around anymore. The hardest part was keeping a straight face. Every morning, I sat across from Liz at breakfast, listening to her talk about her plans for us. Every word she said reminded me of how far she had drifted from the woman I once loved. But I kept my cool, nodding and smiling, silently counting down the days. On the last day, I turned in my company badge, packed my bag, and walked out without looking back. By the time Liz realized what had happened, I was already a ghost. I thought she was trying to mess with me, but she had no idea I was already 5 steps ahead the whole time. When I finally left, it felt like taking a deep breath after being stuck in a smoky room. I was free, But I knew for Liz and everyone else who thought they could treat me like a fool, the real storm was just beginning. The first crack showed up just a week after I left. A mortgage loan was taken out on the house, and the bank wasted no time getting in touch with Liz. She was shocked. For years she had been living under the illusion that the house was fully paid off. Now it was a whole different story. She was stuck with a $2 million debt and didn't have a clue how to deal with it. The same went for the BMW. Payments were piling up, and without my income, Lisa couldn't handle it. I think she reached out to Chad for help, but from what I heard, he had his own issues. His wife found out about their affair because of me and filed for divorce. She took the house, most of their assets, and even fired him from the advertising agency. Apparently, she was a major shareholder and pulled some strings. Chad went from being a hotshot sales rep to the driver of the beat-up old car at the rideshare company was having a rough time, just like Maria. She didn't get the fairy tale ending she was hoping for after I pulled the funding for her wedding. I called William, her fiancé, and told him everything. I even shared recordings where Maria brushes Roman off like he's no big deal. William was heartbroken. He called off the engagement and left Maria to deal with the fallout, without a rich fiancé to back her up or a dad to come to her rescue. Maria moved in with Lisa, and they settled into a 2-bedroom apartment in a rough part of town. From what I've heard, the place was barely livable, but it was all they could afford after losing their home and car. I could have left it at that, but I wanted to make sure Lisa understood the full extent of her mistakes. I left copies of evidence of the affair with Chad's wife and Lisa's boss. Her reputation at work took a nosedive, and eventually she got fired. Last I heard, she was working as a waitress at a roadside diner. As for me, I've settled down in Florida. It's a fresh start, and I don't have to answer to anyone but myself. I bought a truck and a trailer, paid for both in cash, and registered them under my cousin's name. My finances are safe in offshore accounts, and I found a great job with a big company here. Every now and then, I catch glimpses of news about Alice and Maria. They're definitely struggling, and things aren't looking good for them. But honestly, I don't feel sorry for them. They made their choices, and now they have to deal with the fallout. My life is better now than I ever imagined it could be. I wake up every day with a clear mind, no lies, no drama. The sun's always shining, and the future feels wide open. Sure, I might have lost my marriage and family, but I've gained something way more valuable: freedom.